Hey everybody, welcome to the garden. I hope you're having a great day. Shout out to the lemon and lime lovers and everybody in between. It's time for another strategy video. Now, before we get into the strategy, I just want to give some clarity on things. Now, the indicator we're going to be talking about is called the VuManChu Cipher B. I want to make this very clear. This is a knockoff of the market cipher by CryptoFace. Okay, so this is not to say this indicator is better. This is just a free indicator on TradingView. They have some similarities, but not entirely. So I would, if you're really interested in the market cipher, okay, I would actually say you probably want to go towards CryptoFace. He has a YouTube channel. Also, go to his website, which you can find via his YouTube channel, for more information on the actual market cipher. Okay, so though they have similarities in spirit, if you actually put the indicators side by side, there are differences. And to be fair, his indicator also has a lot more add-ons in total that the VuManChu just doesn't. Okay, now I'm sharing this strategy that probably will work with pretty much any iteration of this sort of oscillation. All right. It's a pretty decent strategy, at least in context that it's very repeatable, and it honestly doesn't take much to get somewhat proficient at. Now, is it going to be a world changer for you? Maybe. I don't know. But it's not going to work if you don't have good risk management. Okay, so that should always be the priority. You have to know how to position size correctly. So even though this strategy is going to hopefully do well for you if you decide to implement it, it will blow up in your face if you don't have good risk management. So always keep that top of mind. Now, let's get into the strategy. Now, this is, in my opinion, the best way to implement this is through a multi-time frame analysis. But you can go through a single time frame, but I wouldn't suggest it. It's going to perform better with multiple time frames. Before we look at the multiple time frames, I just want to go over what we're looking for in the indication. Okay, so the main thing that we're looking at for the indication here on Market Cipher B are just pretty much two aspects of it. There are more than two things on here. I'm not going to get rid of it because you want to get your eyes used to all that's going on here. But the main two things we're going to be watching for our setup is this blue wave here. As you can see, it comes down, it goes up, it comes down, and it goes up. Okay, so that's the wave trend. And then the other wave we're looking at is, as you can see, this really thick red wave. Okay, so, and that goes, once it crosses the zero line, goes into this green wave. So that's the money flow, and that is supposed to indicate when money's leaving the market, when money's coming into the market, etc. Okay, so those are going to be the two main ways we're looking for. Now, I have a few examples between longs and shorts. Most of them are currently longs because it's just kind of where we are in the market environment at the moment. But I'm going to first go over the indication and then the trigger to get into a trade, and then we're going to go look at another time frame, a higher time frame, to see if it was correct to even take the trade if you're going to use multi-time frame analysis. Okay, so now starting with Luna Classic here. Luna Classic is obviously been coming down. You see the red money flow, right? So that's showing you that money has been leaving the market. That's been coming down with price. Okay, now what we want to watch first, not the blue wave, we want to watch the money flow wave. So what I have been testing over the last couple months with this is that if you actually wait for the money flow here, so you see how it's been essentially rounding down, making lower lows on this money flow. If you wait for your first indication that the money flow is rising, okay, you see this period right here, how it's rising. What you want to see actually is not just these smaller trigger waves, okay. I actually wouldn't suggest that. For my testing, at least with this indication, you actually want to, what you want to see when the money flow is done falling and rising like this, you want to see this wave, which is like an anchor wave. So CryptoFace, their basic strategy or parts of it is not including the RSI here, which is squeezing, You look for an anchor wave, which is a wave that goes essentially into the oversold, right? So under this white line, and then comes up, and then you want to see ideally a wave that makes it through the zero line, so above here, okay, not over here, but just over in this area below this white line, and then roll back down, and then boom, make a higher wave right here. So that's a trigger wave. So this wave right here would be the entry to your trade. So that's actually what would get you in to the long in this case. Now, why this? Why now? Why not over here on this wave and then this trigger wave? Because if you notice, the money flow is rising here, but what I found in my my studies of this is when you get the anchor wave to show up while the money flow is coming up, then you get the trigger wave again while the money flow has already been coming up. This is when in from my testing is when it's actually best to get in, usually because the divergences that have been happening, right? The divergences, so you see like you have this low, higher low here, but then you have lower lows. These divergences tend to finish playing out, or whether they're failing or succeeding, by the time you get this anchor wave that's actually appeared when the money flow has already been coming up, then the trigger wave. And usually if that is a divergence, that's a divergence that actually plays out. So that's what I want your eyes to really focus on, is look at the money flow first, but look at the money flow has to be rising already. And the way you can tell it's rising is look at the last anchor wave, which was over here, and you see how low this money flow is right down here. That's where it got to. Then look at the most recent anchor wave right here, and look at the money flow. It's all the way up here. So that's your money flow rising. Okay, so when you see this, now all you have to do is have patience. You just have to wait for the blue wave to come back down and then make a trigger wave. Okay, ideally without the money flow going into the green. So that is what I want you to get used to. So we're gonna go to other examples now. So that was Luna Classic. Let's take a look at ICP. So ICP is one that could be happening, let's just say now, right? So not now this very instant, but now today. So if we look at the money flow, we've been coming down on the money flow just like as we've been coming down on price, right? So here's where the money flow started bearish, and then we've been coming down, and then we've kind of flattened out right over here, okay? But we're still coming down in price, all right? So we flattened out over here, and this is the lowest point of the money flow that we have, and this is where this anchor wave is. Then you have a higher wave here, but you don't want this, because even though the money flow is coming up, we want to see a following anchor wave with the money flow rising. And right over here, you have a higher low essentially on the money flow compared to over here, and then an anchor wave. So now all we're waiting for is a trigger wave. So you could argue this is a trigger wave because it's not in the oversold, it didn't go into the anchor. So it's fair to argue it if you want. I prefer to see something a little bit kind of tighter, so something like that. All right, and that would be your trigger wave. But other than you can pull the trigger on this, so to speak, because you have the anchor wave and you have the money flow that's still rising from over here. Okay, so this is and if you notice, you see how the divergence that has been happening. So from this anchor wave to this anchor wave, it's higher, but the price is going lower. But by the time you get this wave from this anchor wave, you have a low and then a higher low, and then on price it follows. So what I'm getting at is when you wait for that anchor wave to happen while the money flow is already coming up, it tends to get you away from the divergence plays that just aren't going to work. Okay. Now, does that mean it's perfect? Absolutely not. Of course not. And sometimes you're just going to miss out because you're moving too slow. But from my studying here, I found that it's actually performed quite well. Now let's take a look at Ondo. Ondo's another example of one that might be a setup, let's just say later today. So we've been coming down overall. Now, this has been in a negative money flow for a long time, right? So, but the money flow has actually been decreasing. So it's been coming down. So you have the low here, you have a low here. So it tried to round out, but it failed. And then you made the lowest low in the money flow since we've gone from the positive money flow. And you can use this bar down here to highlight it to make it even clearer. So this green to red bar is just highlighting when the money flow is, you know, negative and when it's positive. All right. So as you can see, it's been negative pretty much since May 9th on Ondo, but the money flow has been making lower lows over time. Now we got this very low point matching up with this anchor wave, but then what do? So we come up and we start seeing money flows rising, and this is what's key. Money flows rising, and then you have another anchor wave, right? It's below the oversold line, and its money flow is rising. See the low here and it's higher here. That's the key. So now what you want to wait for is a trigger wave. So price coming back, or the blue wave coming back, I should say, and then you have a higher wave that appears, and that this trigger would be your entry into the long in this case. All right. So this is the key that I've seen with these. Okay. It's been actually very impressive once I've implemented it, for a strategy so, you know, so simple, because it is very, very simple, and that's a good thing. And by the way, you know, I just noticed it here. Here's another example. You have the money flow has been rounding, right? And then here you have the money flow start to rise here, and then what you get your anchor wave, right, on the rising money flow. You see how the money flow is already coming up. Then you get the trigger wave right here, and look at this quick trade you would have got in right here on that long, and depending on your stop, whether you're using this low or this low, get a nice little pop up here, about 2 to 1 if you close there, or, you know, whatever you're doing, however you're going to take profit. And we'll start talking about how to take profits and stuff. That's going to be a bit more individualistic, because not everyone's going to be able to follow the same exact you know, retinue on how to take profits, but we'll talk about that once we get through the list here. So this is obviously a good example of what might happen today at some point. So we'll see. Now CFX is a short example that happened. So if you look at the money flow here, it's positive money flow. You see how it's green, and it's coming up and made this high here, and you have anchor waves here, but the anchor waves are happening while the money flow is coming up. So these are not something you want to watch for any sort of like example of like, oh, here's an anchor wave and then here's a trigger wave. You don't want to go for this, because the money flow is doing what? It's already coming up. So the first thing, before you don't even look at the blue wave until you start to see that the money flow is coming down, and then while it's coming down, you have an anchor wave. Okay, so here's your anchor wave. What's the money flow doing? It's already coming down. So here's the highest peak of that money flow, and then look at the money flow here when you have the highest anchor wave, right? Super, super low, so it's coming down. And then you wait for, okay, will a trigger wave appear? So I don't consider this, like, this could be a trigger wave if that's what you like. I like to see, I may be a bit more conservative. I'm not even saying I'm correct. It's just from what I've tested. I like to see the blue wave actually break under the zero line. So, you know, the point where, right here, the point where it separates the high, the low and the high. I like to see it break down, then come back up and make a trigger wave. And for me, from my testing, what I've seen is that's like it's a good confirmation that you're going to get a lower high in this case for a short, or at least a failure. Whereas the other one, you know, like if you took it here, it could just keep going. Okay, it could just keep going and make another anchor wave, and that happens. But so, you know, this breaks down, and then we have a really tight trigger wave right here. And again, context is you have the money flows descending, right? So this anchor trigger look is happening with money flow already down, not turning over. It's already down. So not over here when it's turning, it's already down. That's key. The anchor happening when money flow is already down. then you get the trigger when it's already down. This is what's going to keep you out of like this period of time, I find, where divergences are just going to kind of happen, and then you might get kind of shuffled out. So you get the entry here, and look at this entry. I mean, this is a really good entry. And I don't know how you're gonna do stop, but let's just say it's above the high, and then you essentially start the waterfall down, like a really good trade. And that's one of the things I've found with this indication is that it's actually really good at pinpointing good entries, especially when you're gonna have a trending move before it happens. Now I'm gonna assume that the market cipher, the actual market cipher, is probably even better. At least I would hope so, and I think it probably is. So this is just a free indication that's a knockoff. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, like if you're very interested, if you're finding that this has success, you may want to actually investigate the real indication from CryptoFace, or at the very least ask him about whenever he does one of his live streams, which he does pretty often. Okay, so this is the key, like, that I've noticed, at least with this indication, this variation of this indication, is that you want the anchor wave to happen while the money flow is down, like it's coming down, not as it's turning, it's coming down. Then you wait for that trigger wave, and that's your entry. Okay, so this was a really good one. And then let's take a look at UP, which funnily enough, I'm actually in another trade for UP, a short trade myself, not using the market cipher, the VuManChu, but it just happens to show that this is actually a great example of what I was talking about just now. So you have the rising money flow. So you see how the money flow has been rising here. Okay, it's rising, and you do have anchor waves up here, but you're not interested in these anchor waves to then lead to a trigger wave, because the money flow is just rising. So you don't want to get in the way of that. You want to wait for the money flow to be descending, then get the anchor wave. So here's the high of the money flow here. Then you have an anchor wave right here. But notice the anchor wave, what's the money flow doing? It's lower. So it's lower than this high. So that's your first piece of evidence that, okay, the money flow is coming down now. All you have to do is wait for a trigger wave. All right. So your trigger wave might be this guy right here. Because, came down slightly, popped up. Lower wave, nice little trigger. Or maybe you wait for this one, and then it popped up, and then boom, here's your trigger wave. So either way, both triggers here, or maybe even this guy here, I don't know, but all these waves, these little trigger waves here, they all would have given you a good entry. Your validation may have been about above this this high here. So it played out either way, and it's a pretty good trade. Let's just say you did on the first one here. Here's your stop, okay, and then it just dropped down. All right, incredible, great. So that's an awesome trade. Now, like I mentioned before, let's tie it with a higher time frame. So my advice is, at least in the beginning, is you want to kind of simplify it to where you get proficient enough to where you can start looking at even more time frames. But I would actually just tie it with one, like, grandfather time frame at first. So my advice is, if, like, let's say you're on the 30-minute, you might want to look to see if you're on the 4 hour, right? So let's take a look on the 4 hour. Is it worth our time to be taking the trade? Now, for the 4 hour, unless you're looking for a much bigger swing trade, like maybe it'll go like multiple days, if not like even above a week, I would actually look for, in my testing, is what I've seen, is if you have a blue wave, right, that's oversold. So it's, in this case for longs, it's oversold, and it's, you have a positive trigger, nice little green dot that's already happened in the oversold territory. And then you're going down to the 30-minute, and you see a bullish, right? You're getting a bullish setup, right? So in this case, you're getting, again, that rising money flow, anchor, then the trigger, and then this is your entry. If this is in line with the 4 hour wave that's down in the oversold, this would be a viable, in my opinion, a viable long. The reason why is because you have the potential of not just, catching the 30-minute wave here, right, where, you have the 30-minute money flow wave going into the positive, and that's it. There's your trade. You have the potential of following a 4-hour blue wave up, and you can maybe just follow that. You could, or you can just try and trade in that direction, etc. There's going to be a lot of ways you can potentially trade, and kind of try and catch a larger move. But for simplification, at least in the beginning, I would suggest just starting with like a single larger time frame, before becoming someone who's trying to look at multiple time frames and match like the turning, because it's kind of like a interlocking system where if like the daily is doing this, actually let's draw it a little bit better. Let's just say the daily is doing this, and then the 12 hours doing that, and then the 11 hours doing that, and then the 12 hour, and then the 10 hours doing this, and then the 6 hours doing that, and then the 3 hours doing that. Like, like, okay, if I get in long here, if I get long in this process of where it's all going to round up, I can potentially make my way following from, let's just say this is the 15 minute, and then this is the 1 minute, right? The 1 minute is actually back over here because it retraced, and now it's like, oh, I can get long now because I'm getting the bullish setup on the 1 minute chart, and you get in long right here, and then you follow the 1 minute that then keeps going, and then now the 5 minutes going, and now the 15 minutes pushing, and then the 2 hour, the 3 hours push, and now you're like, oh, maybe I can follow all the way up to that daily potentially turning. Now, that's easier said than done. That's a lot of time. That's going to be a lot of price action. That's where partial TPs, taking some profits over time, killing risk will come into play. It's a lot more complicated, even though it's simple, but it's complicated in your execution and your management of the trade. So my advice, at least at first, until you get this like look kind of memorized in your mind, and you become disciplined in just looking for that, I would suggest just tying it to a single time frame, a higher time frame for now, and then just following that higher time frame's wave, or attempt to follow it, and that way you have the potential of making very good positive EV, positive R's. That's just my opinion. Don't if you have a different thing in mind, if you're going to even use it or try and test this out, obviously follow your insight, but that would be my suggestion. Because it's a very simple strategy once you get used to seeing it. Again, like it's super simple, but you can overload very quickly if you tie in a lot of time frames, because all the time frames, because this is like a very flowy kind of strategy. Like it's more of like I'm going with the flow of the period, whether that period is the 1 minute or it's the 1 week. And they do tie together, because just like price action is going to feed price action going up in time, right? So it can get very, very overwhelming if you overload your mind. So I would say kind of start small, and do it that way, where you just tie. You have your execution time frame, which in this case I was showing the 30 minute, and then you have your like macro or trend following time frame, which in this case would be the 4 hour. And you want there to be separation, right? It shouldn't be the 30 minute and then the 1 hour. That's just not gonna fly. You want like the 30 minute, the 4 hour, maybe a 30 minute, 3 hour, 1 hour and 4 hour, 1 hour and 6 hour, whatever. You just give it, you want to give it room. You do your own kind of testing and see which will do best for you. And again, this happens on every time frame as well. Like, so you can use a 5 minute chart and then look at a 1 hour grandfather chart to kind of give you the direction. But obviously, the higher the time frames, I found those blue waves have a lot more weight on the higher time frames. The money flow on every time frame seems to be pretty sharp. Okay. But yeah, so that was about it. I'm just trying to think. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. I think I went over just about everything I wanted to, because I don't want to overload you guys in case anyone is really interested in this. Again, you just want to take it slow, get used to what I'm showing, right? You want that. You really, really want to go after that look. Get used to seeing where the money flow is already coming up. Again, it's important the money flow is clearly coming up, and you use those anchor waves to show you if it's coming up. Right? Again, here's your money flow low, and it's tied to this anchor wave. The following anchor wave is here, and look at the money flow, it's higher. So that's your, there you go, like it's rising. Then you just have to wait for the trigger to show up. Sometimes you're not going to get that. Sometimes it's just not going to happen. The money flow is going to go into the positive, and then you get your trigger. My advice is to actually let those trades go. I've seen them work as well, but the reason why is because I think if you're really picky, you're going to end up performing better in the long run, because I've seen too many where money flow will go positive, then the trigger wave shows up, and that's the whole move, and you're getting in late. My suggestion is just to essentially only act in longs when the money flows red, and only act in shorts when the money flows green. And that's actually what Crypto Face has also said. And, you know, I also want to recommend going over here to Crypto Face, his basic strategy videos. So even if you're not using the market cipher right now, these videos are good. I use them to get an understanding while I was doing my own testing, and it'll probably be very informative for you. But he has a lot of videos that are good, obviously, to get an idea of how to use them. But again, this is the VuManChu, so it's a knockoff. So it's not exactly the same computations as the market cipher, but it attempts to have a similar like spirit to it. But again, that's it. So hopefully you guys found this entertaining and informative. If you have any questions about it, obviously you can leave a comment down below, or if you're not in the Discord, you can join the Discord. You'll find the link down in the description. And yeah, hopefully you find some value in this if you are going to use it, or at least find some fun in it if you're going to test it. All right, guys, remember, be patient, be vigilant, and be nimble. I love you guys. Take care. Bye.